Tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, just 24 hours away. Kings, Blazers, Golden One Center. The season opens for both of these teams, who many believe are going to be competing for the final play-in spot in the West. But which team is better than the other? Mike Richman from the Locked On Blazers podcast joins me right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all regular season and all off season. Today presented by Prize Picks. First-time users can receive 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports producer and reporter at ABC 10 News, and I'm chomping at the bit for this game to be here, man. My impatience is at an all-time high. Really, yesterday of no basketball, period, was torture. The night before the NBA season begins, of course, opening night of the NBA season does not feature the Kings. We have to wait until tomorrow for it. But either way, we're so close to Kings basketball, real, true, meaningful Kings basketball, that I can almost taste it. I can smell the Golden One Center. I can hear the crowd. I can imagine what the festivities are going to be like. And I can picture, quite honestly, a Sacramento Kings win. I expect the Kings to beat the Portland Trail Blazers in this game. But maybe, just maybe, I'm leaning too far into the optimism, and I'm not giving the Portland Trail Blazers and Damian Lillard the respect that they deserve, even with their trajectory maybe flat or on the way down a little bit. So to help figure this out, to talk about this game, the state of both of these teams, I'm going to be joined here by Mike Richman of the Locked On Blazers podcast. Before we get to that, we've had no real update on Keegan Murray other than what Mike Brown said at practice yesterday. Now, I think we're going to know by practice this afternoon whether or not Keegan Murray is playing. Mike Brown did say that he wants Keegan to get a practice in when he returns from health and safety protocols before actually playing in a game. This is the last practice before the game. Therefore, if Keegan Murray isn't at practice today, which it seems like the signs are pointing to he will not be, then I don't think Keegan is going to be available for opening night, which is a big disappointment. Oh, well, the Kings have to find a way to overcome that. Kevin Huerter was at practice yesterday, didn't participate in full team contact drills and things like that, but did participate in everything else. The day before, he didn't participate in anything with his sore ankle. So that's good. That's progress. I think as of right now, again, signs, this is just my opinion on the situation based off of conversations that I've had, nothing set in stone, no inside information or anything. I personally believe that Kevin Huerter is going to be good to go for opening night, but I'm sure we will get more information if there is any to have at practice later on today. So keep an eye out for that. But right now, enjoy my conversation, this crossover edition of Locked On Kings and Locked On Blazers with Mike Richman. The NBA season is here. Matt George from Locked On Kings, Mike Richman from Locked On Blazers. Kings Blazers opening up their season Wednesday night in Sacramento. Mike, both of these teams, at least when you hear the national conversation and the perspective of NBA standings and things like that, they seem to be in pretty similar tiers, pretty similar spots. But ultimately, NBA season is back, even with or without the expectations. How you feeling about Blazers basketball returning?
Well, I'm excited to watch NBA basketball for sure. That part is fun. I enjoy this stretch. To be totally honest, I've watched the Blazers in preseason and they look pretty bad. So I'm interested to see what it's like when the games count, when they're playing fourth quarters for real, when you can stretch 37 minutes out of Damian Lillard if need be, when you're struggling, those type of things. But I would say the early returns are not particularly promising. Whereas in, about 1,000 miles south of here, maybe 900 miles south of here, the Kings do what they do and they go undefeated in preseason. One of the great October basketball franchises in the world. I bet you're pretty positive about where the Kings are, I would guess, after the exhibition season.
Well, we're feeling good. I made the joke, but it's also kind of true. Like, the Sacramento Kings might be the greatest franchise in the NBA in games that don't actually count. Like, they're two-time Summer League champions, and they went undefeated in preseason last year and this year. So
Yeah, they're
preseason
hot.
basketball, I mean, hey, if it doesn't matter, the Kings are all in on those games. But I mean, maybe that makes Blazers fans feel a little bit better too. You had a crappy preseason, but maybe you can learn from that and turn that around versus the Kings have a good preseason, maybe bring some swagger into the regular season, get punched in the mouth and go, oh, wait, crap, we're the Kings. We haven't won in 16 years.
How much does the we haven't won in 16 years weigh on the fan base, weigh on like how big of a weight is that this season?
It's significant. I mean, the last season was, and I was on record saying multiple times, last season was my least favorite season, probably the most difficult season for me and for a lot of Kings fans to get through, period, because expectations were so high and that team was just absolutely abysmal. Now, expectations for this season are high as well, except the team looks significantly different. Mike Brown seems to have brought in a change of culture. Of course, all of this hasn't been truly tested yet, but the belief is that, okay, something is really different here. It's not like, okay, we're hoping these returning players can figure it out together when it hasn't worked 3 or 4 years. Now you have a couple of returning players or big returning names like De'Aaron Fox, Harrison Barnes, and you've added, I still consider Domantas Sabonis new, even though he was at the trade deadline. Kevin Huerter, Malik Monk, these pieces that can help space the floor, defensive pieces as well that you've added, a defensive-minded head coach with a championship pedigree from Golden State and even in his time in Cleveland. So there's a lot of reasons to feel like this can be different, but there's also a lot of people here in Sacramento, Mike, who are, I'll believe it when I see it type thing.
How so obviously Sabonis, I mean, to me, he's taken over the mantle as the Kings' best player. I don't know if that's like how it works with the sort of De'Aaron Fox hierarchy there, but how much does a full season of Domas excite you? And like, what do you think where do you think he takes them with what he brings?
Well, Domantas Sabonis doesn't just open up the game for De'Aaron Fox, which we saw right away. Like
Right.
De'Aaron from the trade deadline last year on, before he finished the end of the season, kind of out with injury, he went from his low 20s averages to averaging almost 30 points a game. Now there are some outliers there as well. He started shooting over 40% from 3-point range. That's definitely not sustainable for De'Aaron. We wish it was, but it's not.
Maybe.
But the reality is Domantas Sabonis is, and we heard this consistently throughout training camp, Sabonis is just really easy to play with because if you cut, he'll find you. He's not
passer,
selfish. He can score. He'll rebound. But he loves to pass, loves to find his open teammates, can get his own shot when he needs to. And we're keeping a close eye on his ability to space the floor. He's been working a lot on his 3-point shot over the offseason. So we'll see if that actually translates to help the floor spacing. But Sabonis seems like someone that everybody's really happy to play with. And I think 82 games of that, knock on wood, he's able to play 82 and De'Aaron's able to play close to 82. I think can be a really big difference maker for the Kings. But Mike, when I look at the Blazers roster and you see Damian Lillard there and you think, okay, as long as Dame is there, there's a chance because of just how good Dame is. But the pieces that surround him, like I'm really interested in Shaedon Sharpe. I'm really interested in Gary Payton III. Like there's a lot to like about the Blazers roster. Jeremy Grant as well, who is a name connected to Kings and rumors a lot over the last couple of off seasons. But then when I saw them in person in preseason, it just looked disjointed. It looked like, okay, we haven't figured it out yet, and maybe we have a long way to go.
Yeah, they looked Matt, they looked so bad in that game against Sacramento. They looked like that was I've spent the last couple off seasons being like in the preseason, they've struggled the last two. They're the anti-Kings, right? They've struggled in the last two preseasons. Chauncey Billups has never won a preseason game against an NBA team. Which in the past, I would say largely meaningless, right? Like the exhibition season doesn't matter when you have like when your best player's in his 30s, like it just preseason doesn't matter. Like Damian Lillard's going to play when the games count. He'll go get it. And I'm not worried about him. Last year, they're really bad in the preseason and immediately carried over. And so I was like, this year, I'm going to pay more attention to the preseason. I'm going to put more stock into it. And that game against the Kings was like, okay, this team might be bad. Like that was the first moment where I worried. The flip side of that is that the games don't matter and that they did look disjointed. I think that's a good observation by you. They just didn't look connected on offense. It's like maybe this team isn't ever going to be good on defense just because of the personnel, but the idea is that they're still going to be a really good offensive team, and they didn't look like that. And I think that's the concern, right? But to your point, like Jeremy Grant's the best forward that they've had since LaMarcus Aldridge left. He's a big upgrade there. When GP2, when Gary Payton II is healthy, he's going to miss the first couple weeks of the season with an injury. But when he's healthy, that's a really good defensive player that they can add to the mix, which allows them. It's like a cascading effect of having less crappy defenders on the court. You have one guy that helps, then the guy who was out of position, was Josh Hart, who's being asked to do a little bit too much. He slides down responsibility. It helps across the board to upgrade the personnel there. I think, they've made some additions, Josh Hart in there too, some additions that help the defensive woes. You think that Dame gets right. You think that Anthony Simons, who is at least has shown to be a really good offensive player in moments, that they can get there. But my concern with them is their strengths haven't been their strengths, which we saw in preseason. So I think this is like a good juxtaposition. Is this a team that looks hopeful with some new parts that say, hey, the preseason matters, we're on the right track, our coach is roaring in the press conferences? Or is this like, the team that needs to kind of find their footing? And I think that's why game one is an interesting test for both these teams.
Yeah, I think I said Gary Payton the third, and I'm so used to having thirds here with the Marvin Bagley the third in Sacramento. So GP2 is the actual correct his correct
I bet
name.
there's a GP3 out there somewhere. I bet. I don't know if Gary has kids, actually.
We'll have to wait and see on that one. But, my expectation going into this game, Mike, and I've been saying this a little bit on Locked On Kings, is like the Blazers aren't as bad as they looked in preseason. And
Right.
My concern is, and this is maybe the wounded kind of Kings mindset, is the Kings walk into this game with a swagger of, we just beat this team easily at home while not playing our starters and our main guys bulk minutes. Okay, this will be a piece of cake. And that's when Dame and Jeremy Grant and they figure it out. These games matter. So it's like, okay, dress rehearsal is over. Now you actually have to perform. That's when these guys shine their brightest and the Kings get caught napping a little bit. And suddenly they're reverting back to their old bad habits. So I don't know if that lends more of an optimistic viewpoint to the Blazers fans heading into this game, but the Kings are very susceptible to maybe not taking, and hopefully Mike Brown can change this culture, but in the past, the Kings have not always taken opponents that they think they're better than seriously, and it's costed them.
Yeah, I mean, with all due respect, I think most of the NBA is like, yeah, maybe the Kings will be bad.
Yeah.
I think that's been, we're talking a decade of like, yeah, maybe the Kings will be bad. I think that's a safe bet that outside of the market that other teams are like, you know what? They might be a little bit better, but I think we can get this one. You mentioned Shaedon Sharpe, and I want to ask you about Keegan Murray. Let's talk young guys in the second segment. But first, you play Prize Picks, man? You mess around with Prize Picks?
I do. I play Prize Picks. I think it's the best way to play daily fantasy basketball, in my opinion. There's just so much to manage normally with daily fantasy basketball that Prize Picks makes it so much easier. Plus, going against the house, going against the lines, the computers, without having to worry about those sharks online, that's a big difference for me.
Yeah, I use the app. You can also go to prizepicks.com. The app's super simple, super easy. You can make your pick. You're picking, between 2 and 5 players on your ballot each night, and you can make multiple selections. So you can do a whole bunch of them. I'm picking between two and 5 guys. I usually like 4. That's a sweet spot for me on the Prize Picks app. Super easy to use, takes me like 60 seconds, and then super quick to get your money. Once I'm right that Anthony Simons hits his over on the points, I'm getting my money in less than 24 hours. I've really enjoyed it, and I imagine that both of our listeners will enjoy playing it as well.
I really hope the two of them cash in as much as they possibly can on the both Locked On Kings knowledge, the Locked On Blazers knowledge, and ultimately the maybe optimism or sometimes pessimism. You can take the under as well with some of the players that you choose. So maybe you take 2 or 3 Kings on a nightly basis and go, I know they're not having a good night, and just take the under on all of them. And even if it's a loss, you can still make money off of it.
You can. And if you go right now to prizepicks.com or you download the app, if you are a new user and you sign up and you use the promo code Locked On, they'll match your money up to $100 in your first deposit. You put in $100, they're giving you $100. Put in $50, they're giving you $50. So go take advantage today. Go to Prize Picks, download the app, and use that promo code Locked On. All right, Matt, I got other questions for you. We talked young folks. I didn't mention Shaden Sharp because I don't know if Shaden Sharp's going to play, but we'll talk about him in a moment. There is a rookie who's going to play in this game, though. Keegan Murray looks really freaking good. Why are you so excited, or are you so excited about Mr. Murray and the Kings?
Well, I actually have to correct you because there's a good chance Keegan Murray will not be playing in this
He's
game.
hurt?
He's currently in health and safety protocols. We got an update on Monday from Mike Brown that they're not trying to rush him back. There's no confirmation of him not playing or playing. But Mike also did mention that he would like for Keegan to get a practice in before he comes back with the amount of time that he's missed. So as of right now, the stars are aligning, or all signs are pointing to Keegan Murray will not be playing on Wednesday, which is a big bummer, I think, for both sets of fans with how exciting he has looked to this point. Also, there's question marks about Kevin Huerter, who's been dealing with ankle soreness, although I think he's highly more likely to play than Keegan is. But when Keegan does play,
when he makes his debut,
I mean, he's just really good. Like, he's just a really solid, really well put together rookie. Now, I have been high on the Keegan Murray train since the Kings, even before the Kings moved up in the draft lottery. But when they moved up to 4, I was like, okay, Keegan's in your window. The big debate in Sacramento was Keegan Murray versus Jaden Ivey. That was a big debate really around all of the NBA surrounding the draft. I was Keegan 100%. And I'm not going to say that I'm right and I told you so, because Keegan has been better than even I expected to this point. Now, he's been really, really good in games that don't officially count. So how does he play
Kings
in
legend.
games that do officially? Yeah, I mean, some people already think he's the second or third best player on the team. He might make a case for it right away. I think he could be the best shooter on the team. And he's definitely, I've put out the prediction. I'm going to stand by it. At some point this season, Mike, Keegan Murray will be the betting favorite to win Rookie of the Year.
I mean, for Rookie of the Year stuff, there's minutes for him. Dude can score at all 3 levels. And there's minutes for him on a team that wants to be competitive. Some of the younger guys who maybe will be right in that mix are going to be on teams that are worse. And if you're on a team that wins a little bit more, you get the Evan Mobley bump, you get the Scotty Barnes bump of, obviously those dudes were awesome, but it's like, people start looking away from the Cade Cunninghams of the world and be like, yeah, that team sucks, which is like totally unfair to rookies. It's like not how Rookie of the Year should work. But I think the Kings being in that sort of play-in range with a dude who plays regularly, he's going to play a bunch, right? Like I think he's going to play maybe 30 minutes a night on this team, like a bunch.
Yeah, the expectation is he's going to have a decent amount of playing time. We still have to wait and see rotational-wise how Mike Brown is planning on using Keegan. He didn't start at all for the team during the preseason. It was a unpopular decision in my opinion, but some Kings fans really rallied around Mike Brown's decision to start KZ Okpala more for defensive reasons. You saw KZ Okpala guarding Damian Lillard to open up that preseason game. So I get the defensive benefits. I don't think Mike's going to be able to keep Keegan Murray out of the starting lineup for long. And even if he doesn't start, he will be on the floor to close games, in my opinion. And yeah, he's going to be a I have to play him 30 minutes a night player because he's just so damn efficient.
Yeah, they don't have a ton of, like, KZ is a much better defender. The Kings are a little bit, and I can say this as expertise on bad defensive teams. They just don't have many good defenders on the roster. So it's like you got to play, you kind of got to play Davion and KZ and see what, like, at least a little bit to get positive defensive contributions somewhere up and down somewhere on there on the team. But like, yeah, I think Keegan just has to play because he's so good, and it's like, Harrison Barnes is a just really solid vet. He's a dude who gets it done. But if you're sort of choosing for like the long-term health of the franchise, squeezing a handful of minutes from HB so Keegan Murray can play, or playing the two next to them at the both forward spots, totally reasonable. I think you'll see it a bunch. I think Harrison Barnes can play 3 a little bit on most nights. Like, I think he can guard not every 3 in the league, but I think it's fine. Even though if he's more power forwardy at this stage of his career.
So I need your help, because you said that you're not sure if Shaden Sharp is going to play, and that hurts my soul, because when I was going through this draft process, I was very adamant that Shaden Sharp was not a good pick for the Sacramento Kings. Like, I was like, I avoid like the plague. There's too many question marks. The Kings are not in a position to really take that risk. They're not a franchise in the position to take on all of those unknowns, take the surefire thing. Thankfully, they did in Keegan Murray. That being said, I, like so many others, are so intrigued by Sharp. So, like, we have so many questions and maybe red flags with his whole draft process and what happened at Kentucky and all that. But then you see the high school mixtapes, you see the moments that he had at times during preseason, you go, this young man is really, really talented. So
Yeah.
I selfishly want Shaden Sharp to play just to see him, Mike. So put a word into Chauncey Billups. Let's get him on the floor in this game.
I got to be honest, Chauncey's not listening to me. He's he'll maybe listen to my question, but he's not going to listen to my input. Yeah, so Sharp he profiles probably as a 3 at some point in his career, but he's 19 years old and he's 6'6" and skinny. Like, I don't think you can really put him at like a ton of minutes at small forward if you want to be a competitive basketball team. I mean, they should. They should just let him play a bunch. Like, who cares? But with Damian Lillard and Anthony Simons, there's a lot of minutes already spoken for there at guard. Those are, that's 70 minutes that you already have kind of spoken for. If Josh Hart's going to play even a single second at 2 guard, you got to play him there. Seems like Keon Johnson is ahead of Sharp in the pecking order, second-year player who they acquired last year at the trade deadline, because he's more point guardy and can handle the ball a little bit. If Gary Payton is healthy, he's not going to play in game 1. But if Gary Payton is healthy, Shaden Sharp's probably just out of the rotation, just by this virtue of how it works. Or you have to get him in there, right? Like, you have to make a choice. We're going to go small. We're going to play. We're going to get the rookie in there. So Justice Winslow's not going to play, or whatever. The back half of the rotation is going to look a little different because they're making a specific choice to play him. But if you're just playing your best dudes, you're probably not playing Sharp. That said, on night 1 with no Gary Payton, I think Sharp is your 9th or 10th guy. And depending on what the Kings do and how big the Blazers need to stay, because the Blazers have been getting just crushed on the glass, just crushed. And you leave Sabonis in the game still will murder you on the offensive glass. That's a nightmare. So they might need to go bigger, which means that Sharp wouldn't necessarily have a spot in the rotation naturally. That said, I want him to play every night. The Blazers the Blazers do not look competitive enough where you can say, hey, let be patient, let him stay behind the scenes and work on his craft and get there. If they were good, if I thought this team was a home court advantage type team, I'd be like, nah, listen, that's the plight of being a rookie on a good team, is that you just don't get to play. They don't look very good. Play him, play him, get him on the court. I'm with you. You watch the high school mixtapes, you watch 6 minutes on YouTube, and you're like, yeah, I'm in. This dude could be a star, and I want to see him play high-level basketball. He just hasn't played against high-level basketball. I want to see him have to try to score on Davion Mitchell. I want to see him have to try to score on Malik Monk. Not even a really good defensive player, but just a random NBA dude, an NBA guard. I want to see him have to go get a bucket, because we just need to see him more. I'm not, he's not going to be in the Keegan Murray Rookie of the Year conversation because the minutes and the shots aren't there, but he has the talent to be one of the best players in his draft class without a question.
Well, Mike, let's switch gears and let's talk about the play-in race and best and worst case scenarios for this team a little bit, because I've heard a lot of people say it's going to be Kings and Blazers really fighting for that 10th spot, that final play-in spot. However, I get the vibe from both of us that if things go right, and I think there might be a little more optimism in Sacramento than Portland, which is crazy to think about. But if things go right, 8, 9, maybe even 7, it's not unachievable for this team. So my question to you is what's the peak you think and the floor for this Blazers team, and how really intense do you think the battle is going to be between our two teams come that play in Western Conference standings time?
Well, I think first, the important thing for both fan bases is none of the teams behind Portland and Sacramento have any interest in making the playoffs.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, at some point, Utah is going to have to convince a bunch of veterans to go home or send them to other places. Their team is too good for what they want to do right now. They have too many good adults. They're going to have to get rid of the grown folks and bail.
Poor Mike
San Antonio doesn't want to win. Houston doesn't want to win. OKC doesn't want to win. Those teams are out of it. So you're really talking 10 teams in the West, 10 teams plus Utah in the West. So I think the floor for both of these teams is right in that range, right? Is that they're the bottom of the plan. If everything goes right for the Blazers, I think they win 45 games and they finish whatever that gets you, 7th in the West, maybe 6th, because it's going to be pretty crowded in there. But that would mean best case scenario means 75 games of use of Nurkic. Like, he's available and good because they just have so little depth in the front court. It means Damian Lillard, as the all NBA dude, like in the conversation for the best point guard in the league, not named Steph Curry, right? Like, he has to be that good. It means Anthony Simons taking a step forward. It means Jeremy Grant, continuing to like being an answer on the defensive end, as well as continuing what he looks like a little bit in Detroit. All of those things. They need good health. They need specifically, they just need Nurk to play a bunch because they don't have many centers on the roster. All of that said, I think they're like a 45 win team. I think the floor is something like 35 wins. Like, I think it could really fall out on them, just because if Nurk misses a month, say he not even a month, bad sprained ankle, misses 12 days, right? Like, I'm going to have to take 2 weeks. I stepped on somebody's foot. It's basketball. It happens. That means Olivier Sarr and Drew Eubanks are your 2 centers. That's a big step down. Like, with all due respect to those 2 gentlemen, that's not starting caliber centers. It's probably not even backup caliber centers in the league. They're just missing those parts. So I think they're pretty fragile. I think last year the Blazers felt pretty stale. They changed it up. They added some new parts, and now they feel fragile. They feel like their margin for error is just so slim. I'll flip it back to you. What's the best and worst case scenario for your Kings?
What's funny is like that 44, 45, 46 range that you were saying, I think that's peak for Sacramento. And I look at this roster and I'm like, okay, it's not hard to believe that they could achieve that, but because Kings are on the front of their jersey or Sac is on the front of their jersey, you just don't expect it because they haven't been able to do it. Realistically, I think this roster is a playoff roster in the West. That doesn't mean anything because you actually have to play the games, and there's a culture and a history that, regardless of how long you've been in Sacramento, for some reason, a lot of players come to Sacramento and just can't figure it out. Like, the concern is there's been so many players, like Marco Bellinelli comes to mind. Great shooter in San Antonio, comes to Sacramento, forgets how to shoot. So please, God, let Malik Monk and Kevin Huerter find a way to break that curse. So 44, 45, 46 wins, I think, is around the peak for the Sacramento Kings. I just don't know how achievable that is. I don't even want to think about the floor, because the reality is, like, if the King, there is no really where did the Kings go from here. If it doesn't work, it fails horribly, then you're at the point where it's just like, I got to literally blow everything up. At that point, we're talking about, okay, like the De'Aaron Fox era is over. And it's not because you blame De'Aaron necessarily, although there's a lot of attention on him because he doesn't have as many excuses as the guys he's playing next to. Like, and I think De'Aaron's going to rise to the occasion. To be honest with you, I think if De'Aaron played in most other markets, he'd be talked about way more than he is in Sacramento, because he's extremely skilled, and I think he's really going to get the opportunity to show it this year. But like, if it doesn't work, the Kings go, okay, we've done pretty much the best we can with the cards that were dealt at the moment. We got to just blow everything up. And at that point, then you're looking at, I traded Tyrese Halliburton for the Indiana Pacers for a year and some change rental of Domantas Sabonis. And boy, that's going to be something that maybe the Kings regret for a long time, in addition to the Marvin Bagley draft selection. So the floor for the kid, like, the joke is,
wait, who did they choose Bagley over? Just kidding.
Stop it. We've moved on. Damn it, Mike. We've moved on. Don't reopen old wounds. They're still bleeding enough in most of our hearts. But like, the joke is, in the year that so many teams don't want to make the playoffs because of this draft class and Wembanyama,
absolutely, it's perfect.
The Kings are like, yes, we're in, we'll take it, type thing.
It's perfect.
And that might be honestly how it plays out. So if that's the case, then the odds are in the Kings' favor, because the idea of the Kings then outright tanking to try and get into that mix, to me, just it's not even fathomable. So I was going to ask you, Mike, is there a possibility, if the Blazer season, whether it's injuries or just the team sucks or whatever, if the season goes so bad, do the Blazers, you think, ever at any point turn their attention to that draft class, or because Dame is here, they just stick with what they got and figure out where they land?
I think there is a chance that they do pull the plug at some point. Not, they did it last year, but it was like a confluence of things. Damian Lillard got hurt and had to have season-ending surgery. That helped, right? That helps, because it makes the first domino fall. It's like, hey, Dame's not here. We're already going to be kind of bad. And then you get deeper into the season and you say, okay, hey, Nurk, remember how you had plantar fasciitis all season long? And he's like, I don't recall that. No. And they're like, no, but you did. And he's like, okay, fine, I'll leave. If you give me $70 million at the end of this. And then they, Anthony Simons has a knee thing come up and Josh Hart has a knee thing come up. It's like, but you, if you don't have the first domino, like if you don't have Dame out of it, you can't really pull the plug. So I think it's a little bit harder for him this year. I do think it's harder for him. But I think there's a chance that they're kind of naturally like 10th in the West. And then they look up and they say like, okay, well, the two teams above us right now are, I don't know, New Orleans and Sacramento. Let's let them have it. Like, let's let them have it. Let's do a stealth tank. And instead of playing Dame 34 minutes a night, let's play him 31 and see if we can lose those 3 minutes so bad that it works. I don't think they're a shut it down candidate, but they're certainly a like bail out, head the other way, pull the canoe out of the river type of team, just say like, let's walk this one because what's the point? But I will say that's going to take some convincing because Damian Lillard doesn't want to stink. Like he's been pretty clear about that.
And that might be the big difference, Mike, is I think we're going to see some elite tanking from some teams this year, especially at the bottom of the Western Conference. Like we're going to see some of the greatest tanking tactics that maybe we've ever seen. I think OKC's already celebrating the fact that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is starting the season on the bench. Poor Shai. Yeah. And unfortunately, what happened to Chet Holmgren over in OKC. So tanking is going to be something very, very interesting to follow because of the strength of this draft class. But Mike, I also wanted to get your reaction to this because this could be the purple Kool-Aid, the optimism flowing here in Sacramento, but because the Blazers have the best player out of these two teams, that's not debatable, right? Dame Lillard, not debatable. The Blazers have had significantly more recent success than the Sacramento Kings had, not debatable. I look at these teams for what they are right now. I look at the context of this season. I look at the trajectories of both teams and I say, okay, I think the Sacramento Kings are just right now better. Is that fair? Is that overreacting? Do the Kings still need to prove that compared to the Blazers, who maybe are in a rough spot now, but they have proved that in the past?
Yeah, I don't think it's outrageous. Like I probably disagree because I think top end talent matters so much in the NBA. And I think the gap between Dame and Sabonis is pretty wide. And I think I guess it kind of depends on how much better you think De'Aaron Fox is than Anthony Simons. He's better for sure, but it's like, is it several magnitudes better? Maybe, yeah, maybe. So then the Kings catch up pretty quickly. Yeah, I really like what the Kings did this summer. I like Kevin Huerter. I like Malik Monk. I like the Keegan Murray selection. I think that they've got shooting and space around a really fun pick and roll tandem. I worry that this is one of the worst defensive teams in the league. Like I think Sacramento might be one of the worst defensive teams in the league. Guess what? The Blazers are one of the worst defensive teams in the league, baby. So yeah, exactly. So I think they're relatively similar in that regard in terms of their weaknesses. And because of the Blazers' top end talent, I think I would say they're a little better. That said, the betonline.net odds, the good folks at BetOnline, got the Kings as a 1.5 point favorite heading into this game. And I, dear listeners, I would take the Kings of the points, baby. I think just based on what we've seen from these two teams early on, that the Kings likely should be favored. And yeah, I think these are very similar. These teams are in similar spots in terms of overall talent. I think for sure. I like that we both lean with the teams that we cover. That's a perfect little bow on this one. It's like, no, I think the Blazers are better. Well, I think the Kings are better. But yeah, I think these teams are really even, and I think they're going to be really even in the same range all year long.
Well, I'm really excited for opening night, not just for the optimism surrounding the season, not just the fact that it's a home game, because Kings and Blazers opened last season in Portland. Kings ended up winning that game. Not that it mattered much, because soon after the Kings fell into an ultimate downward spiral that never really ended. So hopefully it'll be different for the Kings this year. I think the Blazers there are a lot of people that are counting out the Blazers, and maybe rightfully so. Time will tell, but I'm also very intrigued. A lot of it has to do with Shaedon Sharpe. And I'm such a huge Damian Lillard fan. I'm concerned basically for this game. If the Kings can find a way to put the game away before Dame time can actually happen, then I think Sacramento's in good shape. Because even if it's Damian Lillard and 4 other scrubs on the court with him, which of course that's not the Blazers roster, but I'm using that as an extreme example. If the game's within reach in the fourth quarter, we've seen Dame can do it himself. And when the Kings have their defensive concerns, even with maybe the prospect of Davion Mitchell guarding Dame or KZ Okpala guarding Dame, I still will take the guy that I've seen do it time and time again over the hope of better defense in Sacramento. So if the Kings can do what they did in the preseason game and kind of put it out of reach before it gets to that point, I really, really like their chances into this game. But if it's close, man, I might give the odd to Portland. I'm still picking the Kings to win, but I'm always going to be afraid of that wristwatch.
Of the watch, man. Yeah, I hear you.
Well, Mike, appreciate you, my friend. This was a lot of fun. We'll have to do this again at some point during the season because I have a feeling that once we get close, once the standings start to shake out a little bit, we might be looking at every Kings and Blazers matchup as a mini playoff for positioning.
These are play-in pals. Do you want to host the 9-10 game or do you want to be on the road for the 9-10 game? Well, tune in to Locked On Blazers and Locked On Kings to find out who's going to be 9, who's going to be 10.
For mediocrity, we'll do it together.
Awesome.
Big thank you to Mike for joining me here on the Locked On Kings podcast today. I am ready for this game. I am ready for this Kings win. If you want to respond to anything that Mike and I discussed in today's podcast, share your predictions on who's going to win this game. Share your predictions on who's going to be the better team and finish with the better spot in the standings this season. Send those to me at MattGeorgeSack on Twitter. You can email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. If you want to reach out to Mike with any Blazers questions or comments, you can find him at Mike G. Rich on Twitter. And if you're watching on YouTube, of course, start the debate, start the trash talk. Let's have some fun in the comment section down below. Can't wait to see you at the Golden One Center for opening night tomorrow. I will not have a podcast before that. I will have a post-game pod, though, I believe, from the Golden One Center. So I'm really looking forward to that. If you're going to the game, please let me know. Come by and say hi. I would love to get in touch with you and chat with you a little bit before the game starts or maybe during halftime. So let me know if you're heading out there. Should be a lot of fun, and hopefully this is the start of something great for the Sacramento Kings. Until next time, my name is Matt George. You have been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.